Hey, beloved and probably somewhat traumatized viewers, what was that? What was that? So, Mueller has spoken. He did say the magic word, I hope this is it, meaning I don't have to testify. I'm sorry, if it was up to me, I'd subpoena him tomorrow morning. I don't know. But that's me, not the cards. So, we have to explore this. So it's pushing the Dems very strongly towards impeachment. I'm somewhat sympathetic to both sides of this argument. I understand why it's not appetizing to try and impeach him with a dead end in the form of the Senate. But is it? What on earth are the Dems going to do? So let's have a look-see. What are they going to do? So let's have a look first of all. So we could call this a PM, a post-Mueller thing. Let's have a look at the PM for the Dems. What are they going to do? What are they going to do? All right. So they're in a tight spot. Yes, they're arguing with each other, and you can't blame them. The Five of Wands. It's like it's so difficult because there isn't a right way and a wrong way forward in this. It's unprecedented. Like I said, it's sort of arguments for both sides, but they are arguing furiously behind the scenes. So, what is going on behind this story? So, Trump has turned up. He turns up for me either as the Emperor or the King of Pentacles. He's underneath this. I think it's also fair to say Pelosi has got under his skin too. Who would blink first? And my money would not be on Donald. So, deciding what to do with the greedy king, they have a lot to consider here. But first, we'll go to the foundation of the reading, which is the Ace of Cups, the emotions. It's very, very, very difficult to talk about this stuff like they're doing without being emotional. So maybe they should allow a bit more emotion into it. They've been so constrained and so deliberate and very measured and very reasonable. Well, that sure as hell hasn't been working. So I think maybe they need a bit more of this emotion coming out. But at the moment, this is behind the scenes emotion. The nation is emoting out there. We'll get to that. But the most likely resolution is some sort of compromise with this. What does that mean? What does it look like? So, here we go. Yes, further back. Now, for the Dems, they've been skewered over and over and over by the probe as much as by the president, right? So that's how I read this. This is a little further back in the past. This is every obstacle being put in their path by the president, but they've managed to fight that off. Again, this is more Wands energy, more Pelosi energy. Schumer and Biden, I mean, they're such, maybe I'm misreading them, but they're such unassuming guys. they're very consoling if you're feeling stressed, but they're not fighting. This is Pelosi, I think, fighting, or collectively the Dems fighting off these swords. They're not happy at the moment. As you can, they feel they have been taken hostage by the system and how it's played out, you know, and who could blame them? I mean, look at these cards, viewers, you know. This is how they're feeling. It's important to understand this is not a permanent state. This is how they're feeling right now, and this is perfectly understandable because they do have an emotional investment in saving the country, something that is not shared by their Republican counterparts. So this is as difficult as you would think it was, you know. There's no shortcuts for this. It's profoundly difficult stuff. How are they seeing themselves at the moment? Back to basics. Back to basics, looking at the fine print. So as people are having these particular, I'll call them conversations, but take my word for it, they're quite strident arguments. People are more passionate now. Mueller's spoken. So this is going round in circles, but they're seeing themselves collectively as having to go back to basics and to really work on the nitty-gritty. They're not walking away from this, so that's something. What is their challenge? The challenge is disappointment. They're disappointed the system's let them down, and they fear the disappointment of the American public, not without reason. But that is their greatest fear, because if nothing else with the Dems, they do care. So this is what they're afraid of, and this is what these arguments are about. There are those in the faction saying, if we do not go ahead with impeachment, we're letting down the people. So this argument that was in the minority a few weeks ago, I suspect might be lifting up. Sorry, someone's just come in and crashing around with plastic bags. Just hang on a moment. I'll just pause it. Okay, we're back. So I suspect the faction wanting impeachment is gaining traction. Maybe they should have a plebiscite or a poll with Democratic voters what to go for. Anyway, let's see. How is the atmosphere looking for them more generally? Compromise will be reached. These are two cards of compromise here, which is interesting. So with the Nine of Pentacles, the resources will be made available to go down the fully fledged legal route. And they need to. I think this card, in this sense, back to basics, the paperwork, the conventions. But this is saying a deal will be struck. I'm reading that as with each other. So the environment they're working in, yes, Ace of Clubs. They're working with all this pressure. They've got the pressure from everywhere at this point in time, because they've got the pressure of representing the people in Congress. They've got the pressure of their own personal motivations to want to do something about the greedy king. They have the very primitive mindset and the bullying of the GOP. But I have a feeling, I hope I'm right about this, this is going to be, this fight and the compromise that's reached is the lowest point for the Dems. This is my first major digression, viewers. It's like things were going in a particular way. It wasn't looking marvellous for them, but now they're forced to have to do something. And they're forced to either say, we are going to impeach and set it in motion so we have access to the information so the American public can hear some more of this stuff. But also it could be, we've thrashed this out amongst ourselves, the Republicans have said they will not impeach. We are therefore going to go down other legal avenues. So they haven't got a lot of time left to make this decision. They have to be seen to be acting one way or the other soon, very soon. So they're up against the Fred Flintstone card. Short-term outcome for them, yes, retreat, the Hermits, sorry. Let me bring the camera down again for you. Behind closed doors, even though, of course, people are speaking today and will be tomorrow to the press, this is largely behind closed doors. Right. They need to shine a light on this, and they need to regroup behind the scenes like the Republicans do. They have the blood on the sawdust behind the scenes, but they come out in unison, except for Justin Amash, who I must read on very shortly. I've had a lot of requests. Wow. Okay, so back to the Dems. What I think is happening here, hold on, outcome. Sorry, I'm so invested in this, I'm babbling here. More of the same, more battles to be fought. More battles to be fought. Now, further afield, phew, thank the Lord for that. Lord, have all the mercies, as Tarot's Apprentice would say. Okay, then they get the world. Bigger picture, moving on, you know. It's bearing out what my instinctive feeling was here, which is this is the lowest point for the Dems. Things have conspired to force this situation on them, but they're up to it because they've got a lot of battle cards. Pelosi leading the fray. They know there's a war on and there's more battles ahead, right? So they know this. They're not wimping out. They're up for it. And the further outcome, a much more joyous card. They represent the world and modernity as opposed to the pterodactyls in the GOP. Right. So, before we leave this, we have to ask the question, will they subpoena Mueller? Will they subpoena Mueller? That can't be easy or popular as something they should do. He obviously isn't keen on this road. So we can take away from what he said, there are impeachable offences, and here's your map for how to get there. He has done that much. I think the New Yorker magazine summed it up by saying, Trump is not a criminal. Now, sorry, Mueller, that's not clear enough and good. You can't hide behind legal speak for something as important as this. Needs to be a bit of clarity here. So, will they or won't they? Oh, will they or won't they subpoena Mueller? Oh, will they or won't they? So, in other words, which faction of the Dems is going to win this fight? Will the Dems subpoena Mueller? Have a look. They're in retreat, deciding law and order. New leader will prevail in the world again. Look, from that, if I just look at those four cards, I'd be leaning towards a yes, they will. From the point of view, okay, here they are trying to shine a light on the horror that has happened. They're in retreat as we speak. They're talking, and you can bet your life there are more lawyers than you could count running around in the Democratic back rooms. This is the Hierophant, law and order, going, what can we do? And should we subpoena him? What sort of precedent will that represent? Should we ignore the subpoena now and just go for the other Hierophant, law and order issues? Now here's the key card. The new leader riding into town with a message. I take this in this context, not as a single one, a single identity, but the more useful voices prevail, and they're the voices, that's the AOCs, the Buddha judges, the different ones, who are representing diversity and truth and where the world should be going at this stage. Now, the question was, will they subpoena Mueller? This is saying to me that the old guard are debating the legalities of it, but the young ones are speaking to it and, in fact, moving to their issues. So let me just do a clarifier. Will they subpoena Mueller? Will they subpoena Mueller? Because I've just thought there's another interpretation here. Will they subpoena Mueller? Will they subpoena Mueller? All right. The widower. The friendly woman. And the artist. Oh, wow. Okay, I think there's a new energy coming through here. I'm going to back up with what I was saying, and yes, they will. I can't answer whether they will or won't from these cards, but what I'm looking at here is the younger ones who are tired of all this shit. I'm sorry if viewers find swearing offensive, but sometimes only certain words will do. The younger ones are really sick of it, and for them, the Hierophant, law and order, has let them down as far as they're concerned, and they're just going to move on. So rather than the young ones fighting to subpoena Mueller, I think the vibe behind the scenes, those conflict cards, is more the young ones are going, he said what he's going to say, we're over it. Let's move on with new ideas and save America and hopefully the world. Because really, we're all running out of time and energy around this clown. So I think that's what's going on here. So we have these three cards, which I'll just explain to you. These are part of the Vera Sibilla Italian tarot cards. And the first one to come up, because I'm not experienced with these cards, soul light hypnotherapy is, and Rosie uses them a lot. But this is a card of the widower or someone burying something close to them. Right. So I'm thinking they're a bit over the Hierophant. Then you have the Amica, right, the friend in waiting. I think this is the young ones. And the artist. It's like with the Cups suit, yet another digression, but hopefully the last. Cups rule emotion, but also creativity and imagination. And when I see the artist card here, which is actually hearts, in terms of, you know, the old-fashioned suits, but that's what I'm thinking of. The artist represents a visualization of a new society, right? And a new representation for that society that reflects the world, and not just Oklahoma in 1953, the world. So I think this energy is, we need creative solutions. It's the same for whether it's climate change or the border crisis or whatever. We now need more creative solutions than the present leaders in the US, Australia, the UK, most of Europe have been able to come up with. And I remember, I'm old enough to remember the tail end of the 60s and into the 70s, and it was the music that led the revolution. So that's what brought people together when they were in a bedroom in Australia, or they were in Morocco, or they were in Rome, or they were in Arkansas. You had this amazing music. The arts powered the revolution of the 60s. And I think we've got to stop looking at this purely through this economic gaze, which is not just economic, but it's a very narrow economic gaze. As long as the top 1%, 10%, 20% are doing really well, why should I care that you're homeless with 3 kids on the side of the road, even though you've got 2 jobs? It's the heartlessness that has been noticeable. So I'm seeing a more artistic solution. So I'll be back. Stay strong, resist, and have fun. Okay, don't let any of it eat at your soul. When you feel that happening, time to go out, time to go dancing, time to have a margarita, time to do whatever it is, but get out, keep moving. Do not let these people paralyze you. Go for it. So watch the drama unfold. We're witnessing the end of Rome in many ways, the corruption of the GOP. Hang in there. I love you guys. Bye. I'll be back.